Australians in Lebanon are being urged to leave before it's too late, with the federal government securing hundreds of seats on commercial flights as the situation in the Middle East continues to deteriorate. Israel has issued evacuation warnings in a further 20 towns in southern Lebanon, while 9 people were killed overnight in a strike on an apartment building in Beirut.
The World Health Organization says 28 health workers have been killed in Lebanon within 24 hours, while 2 Lebanese army soldiers were killed overnight. Middle East Correspondent Eric Tlozek is on the ground in Beirut.
Israeli strikes here in Beirut are continuing. The Israeli military says it hit the intelligence headquarters of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Those strikes are no longer just concentrated in Dahiyeh, which is Beirut's southern suburbs. There's been strikes right throughout the city, including close to the downtown and in areas that are not traditionally associated with Hezbollah. That's leaving many residents afraid. They don't feel safe here, and a number think they need to leave the city. That includes a number of Australians. A small number have left on government-sponsored flights so far, and there are more flights in the coming days with more Australian citizens set to leave. Meanwhile, in the south of Lebanon, there's heavy fighting continuing between Hezbollah and Israeli troops, which are pushing north over the border. Hezbollah claims to have killed 17 Israeli soldiers in clashes in some villages. Israel has only confirmed 1 further death of a soldier, in addition to the 8 that it confirmed a couple of days ago. But that fighting is still quite intense and is ongoing. And all this is occurring with the backdrop of a potential Israeli retaliation against Iran for the large Iranian missile barrage which hit Israeli military sites on Tuesday evening. The United States says it's discussing Israel's response to those strikes. There's some talk that Israel may target oil export facilities within Iran. But Iran, for its part, says it doesn't want a war with Israel. It says, however, that its period of exercising self-restraint is over.
Eric Tlozek reporting the federal government is meanwhile pleading with Australians seeking to leave Lebanon to get on a plane before it's too late. The push comes as it's confirmed that pro-Palestine demonstrations will go ahead in Melbourne and Sydney on Monday. Oliver Gordon is at Parliament House. Oliver, good morning. So the protests will go ahead this weekend?
That's right, Michael. There had been some concern from authorities that protests and demonstrations this weekend, which is of course the anniversary of the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, could be insensitive or could even turn violent. We saw in Victoria the opposition suggest that authorities maybe intervene to stop the protests, and in New South Wales we saw the police file an application to have some of these actions delayed or even pulled. We now know that the New South Wales Police and the New South Wales protest groups or group have come to an agreement. In New South Wales, a march on Sunday will still go ahead, but from a slightly different location, and a vigil on the Monday on the October 7 anniversary will also go ahead. That's also the case in Victoria, where there'll be an added police presence for these events. This is obviously these protests have been going for nearly a year now. For a large part, they have been peaceful, but have had extra attention recently because some attendees at these protests have been waving Hezbollah flags. We've seen some condemnation of that from plenty of authorities and people, parliamentarians, and we heard from the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, Tim Watts, this morning, him sharing his views with you, Michael, this morning on this program regarding whether or not people should be protesting on October 7.
My personal view is that there are many days that you can protest, but certain days should be days of solemn commemoration, solemn days of respect, and just think about your fellow Australians. Like, we have more in common with each other as Australians than what divides us. I know that's hard to believe sometimes, but our cohesion, what brings us together, what unites us as Australians, we need to really hold on to that and disagree in a way that puts that first.
Assistant Foreign Minister Tim Watts sharing his views about whether or not people should be gathering and protesting next Monday on October 7.
And the government, meanwhile, is struggling to fill seats it has on those flights out of Lebanon for the many Australians still on the ground there.
That's right, Michael. So we know that there are at least 15,000 Australians who are in Lebanon, and we just heard from the Assistant Minister, Tim Watts. He's also given us some updated figures on how many Australians in Lebanon are actively seeking to get out. We know there's about 1,700 people, Australians in Lebanon, who have registered interest in getting information about getting out, and then just under 250 people who are actually wanting to get out right now. We know there are about 41 Australians who were assisted out of Lebanon overnight. When it comes to this weekend, there are 500 seats on commercial flights, which the government is absolutely urging anyone who is in Lebanon, any Australians in Lebanon who are wanting to get out, to take a seat on those commercial flights, because this is an unpredictable situation, and we've been hearing for many months now from the federal government that if you are in Lebanon and you want to leave, you should get out immediately. There is a backup plan. There's an RAAF plane stationed in Cyprus at the moment, but the government certainly wanting to keep that up their sleeve as a backup plan, and certainly encouraging Australians in Lebanon to get on the commercial flight seats that have been arranged by them.
Oliver Gordon at Parliament House, thank you.
Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories making news this Friday morning. And the National Tertiary Education Union says it's shocked at the scale of the cuts to jobs and spending at the Australian National University, which has warned it will collapse financially without a major restructure. The ANU in Canberra says it's tracking towards a $200 million deficit this year and needs to rein in spending by $250 million to stay afloat. The university says it will close its College of Health and Medicine and make 50 staff members redundant.
There are warnings funding shortfalls in the top end could force victims of crime to wait longer for justice. Northern Territory's Legal Aid says it may have to stop taking on new adult criminal clients from next year, and that could leave people unrepresented in court. The NT Bar Association says it would create further delays and potentially lead to innocent people being jailed.
Research reveals flood, bushfire and cyclone damage has forced 23,000 Australians out of their homes every year since 2009. The University of Queensland study is also trying to forecast just how many people might have to relocate because of extreme weather in the next 25 years. Researchers say the number of Australians becoming displaced is going to rise because of climate change and population growth.
The death toll from Hurricane Helene has risen to at least 200 as rescuers continue to search for survivors. Helene came ashore in northern Florida last week before carving a path of destruction through a large part of the southeast of the United States. It is the deadliest hurricane to hit the mainland since Hurricane Katrina back in 2005.
And talk about hot and cold. Katy Perry's gone from 0 shows in Adelaide to 4. The US megastar's added a 4th and final date in Adelaide on her tour next year due to overwhelming demand, the most of any Aussie city. The superstar caused an uproar when she initially decided to skip Adelaide, but now South Australians get to live out their teenage dreams too.